Good evening. It being August 6, 2020, this is the Acushnet Planning Board. Is there a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open. Second.
Motion by Phil Mello, second by Rick Ellis. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Please introduce yourself, starting from Brian, coming this way, please.
Brian DeChamps. Rick Ellis.
Mark Senorizio.
Henry Young,
Phil Mello.
And tonight, Mark De Silva is out, his wife is having a hip replacement. I'd just like a little prayer for our secretary, Donna. She's in the hospital with some heart trouble, so if you could give her a little prayer in your thoughts tonight, and she'll appreciate it. With that, gentlemen, minutes from July 14th, 2020. Have you had an opportunity to read the minutes?
Yep. Make a motion to accept them. Second.
Motion by Phil Mello, second by Rick Ellis. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Vouchers. We don't have any vouchers. We do have some mail. Everybody here is okay? Thank you. This is a new setup for us. All you folks out there that want to come up, there's a microphone right up here. Please come up and speak. You're more than welcome to. Let's see, Town of Rochester, special permit. Online. Town of Rochester, variance online. Public hearing for City of Bedford. Site plan review, Baker Street. With that,
Is me and one more. That's the regarding docket credit.
I'm going to read this out loud, or
Just wanted acceptance to
seconding the mailing from Beauregard Franco for Office of Representatives, Mr. Mark Francis, 301 Berry Hill, you read everything, so it's all set with that. One more update, want to wait till that till the end, Henry?
wait till the end.
With that being 6:45, public hearing proposed subdivision 148 Peckham Road, Joshua Arruda of Acushnet, Mass. Applicant, represented by John Romanelli of Zenith Land Surveys, Lakeville, Mass. This is a proposal for a 3-lot subdivision on a single access road. Let me just read this out loud here. Acushnet Planning Board is giving notice of public hearings to be held at the Albert Ford Middle School located on 7 Lakeville Road, Acushnet, August 6, 2020, beginning at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is held in accordance with Chapter 41, Section 81G to consider the following petitions in 4 separate public hearings. This is the first public hearing, number 1 at 6:45 p.m. Proposed subdivision of 148 Peckham Road, Joshua Arruda, Acushnet, Mass. Applicant, represented by John Romanelli of Zenith Surveyors, Lakeville, Mass. Proposal is for a 3-lot subdivision on a singular access street. Is Mr. Romanelli here, or Mr. Arruda? Kind enough to walk to the mic and introduce yourself, please.
Gentlemen, Josh Arruda, 148 Peckham Road. John couldn't make it here, fortunately. So I'm asking for an extension on this for next month. I don't know what you have for a date yet. We have any dates?
I was just going to see, you'd like to continue this?
Yes.
Is that correct, sir? August, next date, I don't know, is today is the 6th, we're going to go to the end of the month, or is September?
I think because of the advertising time, it is necessary for public hearings to be a little bit of
September?
September, and we need to do this 17th to 24th. We have not received from the town a set date. We can come back, and we can come back to it. So I recommend a later date.
17th to the 24th, depending on if the school gives us access to this room, correct? Gentlemen, is that okay with you? We don't, either one of the two, is that acceptable with you, Mr. Rude? Freezing the 17th or the 20th, do you want the 24th? Is that
I think it might be best if we just set it for the 24th
okay?
of September.
6:30 p.m. Is that we do not approve extensions okay on it?
Right, so it's a continuation of the public hearing to September the 24th.
Well, yeah. Also, I have, as in a butter here, so I don't know if you guys want to take the route, I don't know if there's any questions or concerns with the project.
Well, we have time, I don't know, we may know ifs, ands, or buts tonight because we are not taking consideration, but
We can hear the letter. No action will be taken tonight.
Perfect.
If you're continuing it, I can read that.
that's no problem, ma'am. If you'd like to speak now, we have a few minutes, you're more than welcome to come to the mic. We will be doing this over again on September 24th. Okay, thank you very much. So with that, proposed hearing for 148 Becker Road, Mr. Ruder, will be continued from this date to the 24th of September, 6:45 p.m., okay? Is that okay with you, sir? Is there a motion?
Motion that we grant the continuation of the public hearing for 148 Peckham Road to September 24th,
6:45.
6:45 p.m. Second.
Motion made by Rick Ellis, second by Phil Miller. Is there all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously, continue this till the 24th. Thank you very much, folks. With that, our next is not until 7 p.m. We have to keep to this because it was a public hearing on the newspaper, so we will take a quick 5-minute break.
You got to close out.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. We'll close out the public hearing. We'll go back into regular session. Is there a motion?
Motion closed.
Rick, you gotta get closer to your mic.
Motion closed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Break, it is 7 p.m. Is there a motion to go from the regular hearing to a public hearing on 1050 Main Street?
Make the motion.
Phil makes a motion.
Second.
Rick seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. With that, at 7 p.m., proposed ground-mounted solar array at 1050 Main Street, Cushing, Mass. LLC of Boston, Mass. Applicant, represented by Steve Kiosha from Scientech Incorporated of Dartmouth, Mass. Proposal is for a 1.3 megawatt DC ground-mounted solar array. Mr. Kiosha.
Good evening, for the record.
Actually, Mark, I'll tell you what, can I just say something first?
Right here.
For the benefit of the audience.
Gotta get closer to the
Oh,
mic.
sorry, for the benefit of the audience. A solar array or solar farm, or whatever they are calling it, that is a use that's allowed throughout the state on any piece of property by the state laws. We are here to condition and approve, but we do not have the ability to just outright deny this proposal, because it is an allowed use under state law. That's it.
Thank you, Rick. Steve?
Again, for the record, Steve Giosa, and representing Acushnet Solar here this evening. With me tonight is Alan Clapp from the Solar Development Company, and legal counsel for them, John Markey, is here as well, in case there are questions that need to be answered. As we
If
should.
you want to take the mask off and then be more comfortable, it's okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So this is a proposed solar array at 1050 Main Street. That is a parcel of land located on the east side of Main Street, just south of Clem's Way and the trailer park development, which is just to the north of the site here. The project is primarily an open field. agricultural land in the back. The overall plans have the border of the property being on the west side with Main Street, so Main Street forms the westerly side of the property. The land is kind of a long rectangle extending in an easterly direction and terminates at a wooded portion of the site. So all of the open area where we are proposing the solar panels is an existing field, so we're not going to be clearing trees or disturbing undergrowth to create this particular system. Early on in the project, we did soil evaluations, we did wetland delineations. The wetlands were eventually approved by conservation. And in fact, we filed a notice of intent for this project. Conservation has issued an order of conditions approving the project from a wetlands protection and stormwater management standpoint. When you look at the site, the panels have been kept back on the property, the far portion of the property away from Main Street, again creating a fairly significant area between the closest panels and Main Street on the site. We are surrounding the array with a 6-foot chain link fence as required by regulation. And along the eastern border of the array, in this area here, we are proposing some evergreen plantings so that we'll have a secondary buffering of the system from Main Street and surrounding residential properties. Access to the site is through a proposed driveway, which would originate on Main Street at the south end of the site, come along the southerly border, and then enter the property in this location here. That would be a gated entrance so that we would have security gating around the actual solar system. As I indicated early on, there are some wetlands here on the south side of the property. There are wetlands on the north side. But for the most part, this is an upland site. So from a stormwater management and from a wetlands impact standpoint, the commission was very happy. We were able to maintain some pretty good buffers between the solar modules and the wetlands. You'll see we've actually tried to keep out of the 100-foot buffer zone here in its entirety, and we've kept the modules out of the 100-foot buffer zone on the northern end of the site. So again, we've looked at those sensitive features in laying out the project, and we think it works really well. The access is being proposed through the middle of the site, terminating in a little turnaround at the far east end of the project in this area here. And then again, there'll be a gate for access for service and emergency and just use of the landowner to access the far back end of the property. Stormwater management, the way the property slopes, it actually breaks in 3 different directions. There's the portion of the land that slopes to the south, a portion to the north, and a portion towards Main Street. Because the topography works really well for this project, we don't have to do any major grade changes. So we're going to maintain those existing drainage patterns as part of the proposed project. But for mitigation, we are, after running the analysis, proposing a very shallow stormwater management basin. The dry pond, it would end up being above the water table by a couple of feet. So it is a dry-based pond, and it would flood to a maximum level of about 2 feet during a 100-year event, slowly dissipate and return to a dry condition. So at this time of year, you wouldn't see any water in there for extended periods. Small rain events, you may see a little bit of water, again, dissipating through the outlet to the north. On the entrance road, as the board probably recalls, we met with you back in the beginning of the year, and there was some discussion about drainage towards the street. Just so the board knows, our original drainage analysis took that into account. We looked at the changes being proposed, and we did analyze that component of the flow going towards Main Street in our drainage analysis. Has been confirmed to not increase runoff towards the street. But the concerns were really more how are we impacting the flow along Main and making sure we're not going to alter the way water travels along the gutter line. There's kind of a shallow swale that runs in a north to south direction, and runoff that does kind of run off of Main Street Some of it travels in that swale and continues past the entrance to the site. Some of it, in a bigger storm, overflows that little bermed area and flows into the applicant's property. Excuse me. But in the end, we're going to maintain that drainage pattern. But in listening to the neighbors and listening to the board members at the earlier meeting, we've actually provided some additional details, and we've added a supplemental filter strip for drainage control. So what we proposed is along the north edge of that access drive, from the solar array down towards the point just before the low point on the site, a crushed stone filter strip. We've added detail to the plan, and it is depicted on the largest. It's a little easier to see on the next sheet, which is a 40 scale plan, and you'll see it running along the edge. It's about 400 feet long, so it's a quite extensive filter strip to provide some additional buffering of the stormwater runoff that might flow off the driveway. So the driveway has a cross slope towards that filter strip, and any runoff that does fall, or any rainfall that falls on the driveway that doesn't seep into the ground in the driveway, is directed to that filter strip. And again, we know that there was a lot of discussion about the very edge of the project and how we were treating that along Main Street where the driveway would connect. So on sheet 9 of 11, we have added the detail at a larger scale, so it's easier to pick up, where we've added spot elevations for the contractor, so the contractor knows how to complete the grading so that we're not blocking the flow of water along Main Street. And a little bit of a swale that exists on the side will continue to flow right across the paved apron for the driveway and then continue in a southerly direction. So in the end, we're not altering the drainage patterns, and we have provided some supplemental mitigation, even though our original analysis indicated that was not necessary. Again, at the earlier meetings, there was a question or a number of comments from like the fire department asking us to consider a couple of things in the design. The first was to provide, it's easier with the color. The first was to provide a secondary turnout in the middle of the site. So we did provide a T-type turnout here right in the middle section. So entrance comes in, there's a T turnout here, and then the secondary turnout here at the back end of the site. So we did incorporate that into the design. We were also in discussions with the fire department. Alan had spent some time speaking with the fire chief on mitigation. There was a request to add a storage tank for water on the property. As an alternative, Alan had offered a contribution to pay towards purchasing another piece of fire apparatus. I think after a couple of back and forths with the chief, it was decided they didn't have a place to store the equipment and that the tank on site would be the more appropriate way to go. So that is one condition that we would be willing to incorporate into the final plan, and that would be adding the storage tank that had a fire connection that the fire chief had requested in his early comment letter. So we are in agreement to provide that as part of the design. One of the other comments that had come up was the battery storage units that are proposed for this system. You'll find that most of the solar companies and most of the new solar projects are looking for battery storage so that during non-production hours there is the ability to still get production out of the system. So we did provide some cut sheets to the board on the battery storage units. They're state-of-the-art. These are Tesla units, and they basically look like containers, like you would see a shipping container, obviously a little bit more modern, mounted on a pad. Again, they're within the fenced-in enclosure, so they're not exposed to the neighboring properties. They're, in this case, located in the south east corner of the system layout. We create a little plateau in the topography and place the pad there near the inverter pads and the other equipment pads. Again, so they're easy access to service from the access drive, and yet they're convenient for the power storage and generation for the site. There were a couple of other minor clarification points that I think the building commissioner had asked for, modifications to the stormwater addendum, and we modified that both on the plan and in the addendum, just identifying that Acushnet Solar would be the responsible party for maintaining the stormwater management system as opposed to the landowner, and that's probably a better option, given the fact that they are going to be leasing the property, responsible for the cutting of the grass and maintaining all the other elements. It's clearly their responsibility to maintain any drainage systems associated with the project. So we did alter our stormwater attachment to address that particular issue. And we talked about the fire chief. There are test pits that were completed on this project early on, and those test pits were used by conservation to verify that we were in compliance with stormwater management for groundwater separation of the detention pond. We've actually designed the pond so that the bottom is essentially sitting on natural ground. So we're not excavating a hole in the ground, we're really just working with the natural topography, berming the down gradient side, and then the water gets the pocket in this area here. It makes for a more efficient design and makes sure we're ensuring a dry-based pond. But we have shown all the test pits on our plans, and we've actually added the soil logs to the plans with the soil certifications on seasonal high water, estimated seasonal high water, just so that that information is there. I think the board had also asked us to add the test pit data to the drawing. There are no ponds proposed near Main Street, so again, we didn't do any intrusive testing in that particular area. And I think, since the last time we spoke, and for the people who were not at the initial presentation, I think that's the changes and an overview of where we are with the project at this time.
As an all-public hearing, folks, we ask the board members to ask questions, then we ask the public to come up and they can ask their questions. So any board members, do you have a question? Any questions for this gentleman? Close to the mic.
After construction is completed, how often is somebody going to be visiting the property? Like once a week, 3 times a day, 20 times a day? I don't have to feel for it.
It's very infrequent. I think it's probably a monthly visit at best, sometimes less.
2 to 4 times per year?
2 to 4 times per year, sir?
So I'm assuming there's some kind of remote monitoring system to let you know whether the system's working correctly or not. Yes.
There is a monitoring of the production, so if the production drops, it's a nice sunny day, and all of a sudden the production drops, they know something's not working correctly, they can send me people out there to take a look at it.
So I mean, really, once a month is about as often as you'd be going out there under normal circumstances, obviously. If a hurricane happens, that's another situation. Okay.
Gentlemen, any other question? Andrew?
Yes, sir. Did the fire chief have the opportunity to review the battery storage facility?
I don't believe so. Again, we showed the battery backup where that was going on the initial plans, but I don't believe he's had an opportunity really to give us any feedback on the units. Again, they're fairly standard, they're solid state, so there's no liquids, there's no, again, the fire hazards have been really not an issue in that type of equipment. Self-contained, but no, I don't believe he's provided any type of opinion on that at this point.
I would suggest that he would have the opportunity to take a look at that prior to final approval. He was at one point concerned about containment of those systems, or from the sense of if there was ever a fire, the water goes in, and then the water that goes in is contained in some kind of concrete.
Something with a lip on it, yes, like you would do for an above-ground storage tank. again, you know, those issues they're, when you look at that, you need to have a system where when it rains, because this isn't gonna have a covering over it, it's gonna get water in it, and that's gonna fill up. So that becomes a difficult thing to manage unless there was an automatic drain and then some way to plug that in the event so it's open all the time. That if the fire department comes out there, they're applying water or some foam or something, there's a way to plug it. But I would think on an electrical fire, they're using foam as opposed to water. And so I'm not sure that's as big a concern in a case like this, as opposed to a fuel storage tank where you're dealing with large volumes of liquid that you're trying to contain.
I hear you. Fire chief may have concerns. I would just want to take the opportunity to let him express.
Sure.
Issues he might have. The second thing is, now that we're near final stage of the design, we will need to submit this to our third-party engineering firm for a decommissioning estimate, which that's a number that gets filled into the special permit document at the end. So that's something you and I can follow up on after this.
Okay. Anyone on the board, any more questions? Anybody from the public, would you please come up and stand next to the mic, introduce yourself, please, sir?
Yes, my name is Dan Alonso. I live directly across the street. And my biggest concern is, and last time he was here, he had photographs of the field and the mailbox, which was mine, and it was nice and dry. We all know we haven't had a lot of rain. But what little rain we have, I have photographs of a pond. Now, this is only a little bit of rain that we have. There's a pond there. Now they're gonna put a road there. This water has no place to go but underground to my house, and the house next door, and the house behind it. They're blocking any chance of that road going anywhere. That water's gonna stay. All I'm asking is that you put in a culvert, run it off somewhere. That's all I ask. I agree with the solar farm. I think that's a great deal. It'll never make our electric go down, but it's a great deal. And that's all I'm asking. If anyone wants to see a photograph, I got photos of it. Because as soon as I saw it, I said, I gotta get photos, because he's saying there's no water there. We had like one day of rain, and we already got a small flood. We had no winter. But the winter before, the water went from that stone wall all the way down to the driveway, which is 300 feet. There was geese swimming. That's how deep it was. My sump pump ran from one straight, 24/7. The guy next door, the same thing. The house on the side, the same thing. And now they're gonna make it even worse by putting a road in it. And that little gully, he says that's there, that's from the mail truck running back to the mail. That's all that is. That has nothing to do with the water running down the road. That's all it is. I mean, I understand you guys are putting up the gravel and all that, that's great. It doesn't do me any good. You're just making the water sit there. I mean, I've got the photos if anyone wants to see them.
I provide every day.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can add?
You've seen it in the spring? When that water runs from the wall all the way down to,
Well,
the
right
garage.
when those new houses moved in, there was a culvert that went all the way down.
Exactly, and it filled the culvert in and that was
All the way
it.
down, right? So when the new houses went in, they filled in the culvert,
Right.
that's where all the water comes from, correct?
So why don't we dig it back up again? I mean, somebody's gonna be responsible for it.
Talk to Dan on.
In fact, I think they did dig it up. The first time they filled it in, we had the downpour come down and they made him dig it all up, and he did. And then slowly filled it back in again.
Make a recommendation that we call Dan from DPW, get a hold of that.
Yes.
But you still need to put on that, if they build that road, you're still gonna need a pipe to go under it.
I understand what you're calling.
I mean,
All we can do is ask,
unless they can run a solar panel to run my sump pumps and, you know.
might get lucky, put an extension cord across.
There you go. Yeah, run it over.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Please feel free to speak. There's a public hearing on this. Yes, ma'am, come on, please introduce yourself.
My name is Irene Pipes, and I live at 1020
Just
Main
get a little
Street.
closer to the mic, please, ma'am.
My name is Irene Pipes, and I live at 1020 Main Street, which my property abuts the farm where solar farm is going to be built. I'm the one that is going to be right next to it, so I'm not very happy with the solar farm being built right there in my backyard. Okay, yeah, I think it's too close. I mean, there's a lot of houses there. I'm not comfortable with that there. Absolutely. I'm totally against it.
You are entitled to your opinion, but as Rick said,
And it's, the other issue too is the flooding. There's been flooding since I moved there. There's always been water. The drainage system is definitely awful there. And now with the solar farms going to be put there, right next to me, where I can see it every day. We have farm animals. I'm very concerned. I have a young child at home. I'm concerned. We really don't know the effects of the solar farm, what that can do to the soil. I don't think there's enough research on it at this point. So I don't feel comfortable being built so close to my property. Had to get a little further apart because the way it's being presented, it's very close to my property.
take all that into consideration. I can't give you an answer, I'm not DPW man. All I'm saying is, we have to listen to them, we have to listen to you, to do best, what is best for the town.
I'm surprised the more neighbors aren't around because there are a lot of houses there and there's a lot of children around there too. And I'm really surprised that other people aren't here in the neighborhood.
You see that all the time.
Again, I'm against it. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's a safe place to put it. I mean, if it's a little further away, maybe, but it's very much too close to my property.
All will be taken into consideration. Thank you for your time. Anybody else? Please feel free. This is the time to speak up, folks. This is a public hearing. Steve, would you like to say something else?
Sure, just briefly, if I may. In response to the gentleman who I know is concerned with the puddling in the front, and we acknowledge the water does collect in that front area there. That's just what it is. And it's because that area to the south was filled in at some point in time, or became the stone walls or mortared stone walls. There's really no migration point. As a point of interest, if the Public Works were to extend a culvert from the lower area further south along Main, bringing it up to our boundary line, the applicant would agree to put a pipe under the driveway to make that work. Right now, putting a pipe under the driveway would not accomplish anything because there's nowhere for that water to go. However, if Public Works, and if the board feels strongly about it, it could be a condition of an approval, that if Public Works were to extend that piping up to the applicant's property, we would in fact install a similar sized pipe to extend beyond our driveway, so there'd be a continuous flow path all the way through. I don't know if it's practical to be able to do, so I'm going to leave that up to DPW to decide.
That's where our challenge is, all up to DPW.
Right.
We can only make a suggestion. Talk to Dan. Dan does a great job at everything, but it depends on his limitations.
Right. If he's able to accomplish something, the applicant is willing to invest in the next segment of the pipe to get beyond the driveway, so that it will address the concern of the gentleman to flow the water.
Please, folks, public hearing. Any other questions, anybody? Please feel free. With that, gentlemen on the board, do you have any other questions? Everybody all set? With that, is there a motion to close this public hearing? We will continue this public hearing till September 24th at 7 p.m. Is there a motion?
Make that motion.
Bill makes a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Rick makes a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. With that, 7 p.m. on the 24th.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we have to go out of public hearing into the regular session. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn to a regular session.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, folks. With that, we have a 3-minute break till 7:30, because I have to wait till 7:30 to do the next public hearing. Thank you. Back from a small intermission. So bring your board back into the regular hearing. Is there a motion to go from the regular hearing to a public hearing on 0 Wayne Lane?
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
With that, at 7:30 p.m., proposed ground-mounted solar array on 0 Green Lane, CBE10A of New York, applicant, and represented by Asia Smith, Atlantic Design Incorporated of Warren, Mass. This proposal is for a 1/2 megawatt AC ground-mounted solar array at 0 Green Lane. Gentlemen, please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here.
Sure. My name is Ryan Young. I represent CDE, which is the owner of the property and also the owner of the project. This is Nick from Atlantic, our engineer, help out with any technical issues or questions. I know you all have seen this on many occasions at this point, so I'm going to try and be very, very brief.
Okay, take your time, we have the public hearing, this is a public hearing, so give it the best shot you got.
Okay, fair enough. Just as background, CDE is a solar company, but a little bit different than a lot of development companies. We're owner-operators for the long term, so we try and purchase or lease property and with the intention of owning the solar project and the land for as long as the project is there. And we try and invest into the communities with not only our project, but jobs and including our dollar per panel program back to the environment. We will incorporate that into this project. CBE actually owns both sides of the road out there, so if you're heading down Wing Lane to the south, the Rocket Solar Farm is on your right. We purchased that last year and now operate that. It seems to be up and running pretty smoothly. We also own the left side of the road, which is 88 Wing Lane, and we have a special permit on that side. And then, so the purpose of tonight's hearing is for what's now 87 Wing Lane, and the small project that will be just on the south side of the transmission line corridor there. So this is the existing solar farm, and this down here is the new solar farm that we are proposing, and that is the topic of the special permit tonight. Both projects
Same
are.
side of the street?
I'm sorry?
It's on the same side?
The project we're proposing tonight is on the same side as the existing, just on the exact opposite side of the transmission corridor. And it's that area that's already cleared, and it's right next to the Eversource substation there, just for orientation purposes. And there's an old shed there that we'll probably take down, as that little white shed. One of the last things I'll say in terms of size, if people want to know that, the size is it's about 0.5 megawatt, which is about the same size as the existing project. This project's on a smaller parcel, and it's smaller, but the same amount of power because of the panel changes over the years. We're getting a higher wattage per panel. Very traditional solar design and development, and we will do a pollinator-friendly plant underneath solar panels once they're installed. And I think that's about it. The only change, I think, from last time is that we've cleared up that we're not doing any sort of battery storage on this project. It's just classic solar. It goes right into the grid. And our plan with the power is we sell all our power right back to the community, to residents or businesses. Anybody can sign up to the platform, purchase power by a subscription basis, and then saving in your electric bill. So that's the plan for the development, plan for the power. And if all goes well, including getting through the special permit process, we may be constructing anytime this fall or winter and should be a fairly short process for this project since it's relatively small. Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
I think from a design standpoint, we pretty much covered everything in the comments where we talked about keeping trees and buffer. We have notes to that.
Where will your buffer zone be, sir?
Buffer zone, we're down along both sides here. We do have to maintain a buffer zone from the electrical easement. And that's also
Put the
maintained.
mic so that the rest of the audience can hear you, sir. No, just pull the mic to you, that's okay.
There's a electrical easement to the north for power lines, and then we maintain the vegetative buffer, which is existing to the south, fencing to the east. It falls along right up to the shed, and the shed is actually kind of overgrown in existing buffer too. Oh yeah, on the berm that's in front of it, we do have a note on here saying that those will be revised, changed if the deck placed.
With that, as in all public hearings, the board gets to ask the questions first, and the public will get to ask any questions they like. Gentlemen on the board, any questions?
How are you doing with your Eversource interconnect permit?
Very well, actually. We have a interconnection agreement with Eversource. Because we're so close to the substation and there wasn't a lot of capacity there, this process happened very quickly, as opposed to in town, it might be here, but it's taken a long time. This one was very smooth.
Is Eversource looking for any major upgrades in the system before they want to tie in?
No major upgrades for this one.
Some of the other prior projects that came in here, they had to have the battery. Why didn't your project?
Yeah, I heard you, but maybe they didn't.
No, I'm just asking about the battery. Some of the other projects that come in here, you know, they've been required to have the battery. I'm just wondering why your project, that's not required.
Yeah, there's a couple provisions in the state law. Some of the old projects will be grandfathered and won't have to have a battery, but even in the new law, any project at 500 kW or lower does not have to have battery storage. So, for example, on the other side of the street, we didn't have to do it, but we are. On this side of the street, we don't have to, and also because of the way the jurisdiction of the utility lines, it made it very difficult to do it there, so we just opted not to.
Gentlemen on the board? Henry?
Yes, this project's been going for quite some time. As I recall, you did have a chance to meet with the department chairs.
Yep.
At some point. Did you retain all the correspondence from them?
Yes.
Have you heard specifically from DPW director and fire chief?
Do you believe we have both?
Okay, just please.
Yeah, we'll double check, but I think we heard,
No, we hear from the fire chief.
I'm always concerned the fire chief is, well versed in the project. So as we approach finalization of this, I will be reviewing your packet to make sure you have correspondence from all the department chairs we met with back in early March, I think.
yeah, let's,
Right.
yeah.
And then there's the second point that I was bringing up with the previous project is that I think we're at the point now where we can work with our third-party engineer to develop the decommissioning estimate, which is a number that gets placed into the special permit.
Yep.
That's something you and I can work on.
Okay. How long does it usually take?
About 2 weeks.
Gentlemen on the board? Any more questions? Public, anybody in the public? If you have any questions, please feel free to come up and ask. This is the time, place. Anybody want coffee or a donut? With that, we will make a motion for the next meeting. What do you think? 15 minutes, good?
Yes, continue that to
7:15 on the 24th of from 0 lane to 87, is that the number?
Yeah, we, I don't know how that impacts you, but we had to get the 911 address, so the chief and the tax assessor approved 87 as the correct address.
So on the cover sheet, we'll carry it as 0, and then you can put in parentheses, modified to 87.
Okay, yep.
So there's a record that tracks to the paperwork for 0.
Okay,
It shows movement to the 87 address.
okay.
So motion to go from public hearing back into the regular hearing.
Make motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. With that, back into our regular hearing. Our next one is at 8 o'clock. If I can, I jump forward. I don't know if anybody's here from these estates. Anybody for Form A for Ellen and Robert Harding, 1443 Main? Request for waiver on the Fontaine Pembroke Streets. With that, we will take a 15-minute break. I have to come back at 8 p.m. for another proposed solar farm. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you. Back from our commercial break into the regular hearing. Is there a motion to go from the regular hearing into public hearing for 8 o'clock?
It's no motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Being 8 p.m., proposed ground-mounted solar array at 251 Mendel Road, Borrego Solar Systems Incorporated, Global Mass, applicant, represented by Brandon Smith, also at Borrego Solar Systems Incorporated, Global Mass. This proposal is for a 5-megawatt AC ground-mounted solar array. Anybody from this solar array, yep, please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here, please, sir.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Smith. I'm with Borrego Solar, presenting this project, proposed project at 251 Mendel Street. The proposed project is located on a 92-acre parcel east of Mendel Road that previously was used by the Greenbrier Girl Scout camp. It is a wooded parcel that will be proposing to place this project on. We are bounded by Mendel Road to the west and Tinkham Brook to the east. The project is it's a 7-megawatt DC, 5-megawatt AC solar facility with energy storage. So we're proposing energy storage with this one. The facility will cover approximately 18 acres, surrounded by a 7-foot chain link security fence as a typical solar facility. The modules will be placed on using terrace mark racking, which allows us to place them without requiring grading or anything like that. So no cut, no fill is required for this site, with the exception of access road, equipment pads, and some stormwater features. We have done a stormwater analysis on this project, and the result of that is several stormwater basins basically placed around the surrounding facility to ensure that our peak discharges do not exceed the pre-existing discharge rates. Access to the site will be using the existing gravel road that the Greenbrier Girl Scout camp used. Will be
Just pull that mic back and point out where that existing road is going, please, sir.
certainly. So this is Mendel Road here. The existing access road, again, this is existing, but it is a gravel road, but it's in disrepair. So we'll be improving it to a 14-foot gravel access road and extending it. It currently stops around here, approximately 500 feet in from Mendel Road. There'll be extending it closer to 800 to the equipment pads for the facilities, with 2 equipment pads north. The north equipment pad is where the battery, the energy storage facility will be located. Interconnections on Menlo Road, there will be several utility poles constructed along that gravel access road leading to Menlo Road. As I mentioned earlier, the site is fully wooded, so approximately 20 acres of trees will be cleared for the project. Other than that, we have just high-level items to know. We have already gone through Conservation Commission and received approval from them. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm with Borrego Solar. We're committed to being good neighbors to our abutting property owners as well as the towns that host us. So we'll be happy to answer any questions the board or public may have.
As in public hearings, we have some boards ask the questions first, then we ask the folks out in the public ask. Gentlemen on the board, do you have any questions?
When do you guys start clearing that thing?
So currently, the schedule is we have not received our interconnection study back. We've started that process, but right now we wouldn't be scheduled to begin until 2021, likely fall is the kind of current.
That's the owner of that land?
The owner right now, the land is actually owned by a trust, 251 Menlo Road Trust.
Rick, take that moving down on this as far as.
Well, I don't really see anybody else come in, but,
Three people can.
we, in terms of solar farms, solar arrays, these massive solar panels, they are an allowed use by the state, statewide. So our role here is not to approve or disapprove. We cannot actually disapprove the use of a solar farm on any parcel in Acushnet. We can condition the approval. We can make sure that they post bonds to remove it. Once it is no longer functional, there's something we can do in terms of screening. Obviously the fire department has things they can say. So we can condition things, but we can't just say, no, you can't have a solar farm here. That's the way to say it, basically, the way the state law is. Can I ask my question?
Yes, you can, go right ahead.
Now, this is a fairly large proposal compared to the ones that we've seen so far. How long do you estimate the construction would take once you get all your approvals in line and stuff? And on the site, not necessarily what Eversource is going to make you do for the interconnection.
For a facility this large, typically 6 months of actual, active construction. As you mentioned, there are oftentimes extending timeframes before it's actually, plugged into the grid and allowed to actually produce power. But the active construction time period where, the vehicles going in and out would be about 6 months.
And of course, I've got to ask you about the interconnection permit, because again, this is a pretty large proposal. Is it something that Eversource is looking to have a lot of improvements done to, like substations and lines and things of that nature?
We haven't got this study, we have not received the study back yet, so I'm not sure the exact details of what will need to be improved. But that process has been done.
Yeah, I think it would be onerous to, you need obviously a special permit from the town, you need your interconnection from Eversource. You also need a conservation commission approval. Are there any other approvals that you need to get in order for this to go forward, like funding assistance or something like that?
No other, we'll apply for incentives, but no other approvals, if you will. No other town approvals. We've done, FAs, fish and wildlife, that type of thing. So we'll apply for incentives, but not necessarily.
Now, some of the other projects, I mean, the incentive part of it was key to making things work financially. Is that going to be, I mean, you don't qualify for the incentives that you're looking for. Is that something that's going to D6 the project? I know that's a big question, but, from my perspective, we've seen quite a number of these things go before us. And by far, more of them have never happened than not. In my own mind, I'm trying to get an idea what the percentage is that this project is actually going to go forward.
Definitely, that's a good question. And, I can't necessarily answer it because there's so many variables, but what I can say is that Borrego does take a different approach than a lot of solar permitting firms, where our projects are upwards of 90% by the time we're in front of a town, they are a real project, they actually get built. So we, prior to coming to the town, we do our due diligence and look into the financials and make sure it's going to pencil, rather than kind of throwing a permit or throwing an application and seeing if it'll stick before, we actually know it will be profitable.
I mean, it's very possible that this might not even happen in 2021. I mean, with all the pieces that have to fall into place, construction-wise and financially. Okay, all right. That's as good an answer as I would expect to get. Thank you.
Down on the board, any other questions?
From a purely administrative standpoint, I need the concurrence from your butter source plan, so you can give those to the neighbor.
Yep, I have them. I will listen to them to you before I do.
Okay, so your plans were distributed to the Department of Development Department chairs, and I have correspondence back from the Board of Health and the police chief. I presume you've seen those stuff?
I have not.
Okay, we need to make sure you have it. The fire chief, I'd be particularly interested in, you need to ensure that you have answered all of his questions. So on his behalf, a couple of questions we always ask are, describe the access to the site, how he could get his fire apparatus onto your site from Mount Road. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, definitely. So from Menville Road, our access road proposed to be 14 feet wide. It'll come in using the existing access, so it's actually really in good shape. It's cheap over the maintenance. We will extend it. This is all fairly flat, and really no steep grades or drop-offs or anything like that. So it's definitely accessible for fire vehicle. Our gate will have provisions for a Knox box that the fire department will have access to, so they'll be able to access the gate if needed. The two kind of branches here, the north and south of the equipment pads, both have turnarounds and they'll be constructed to allow, and they'll be large enough to allow a fire apparatus to turn around.
Do you anticipate having on-site battery storage? We've seen that on a number of sites. I presume you will on this one.
Yes, the northern equipment pad has an energy storage unit in that location.
So from the fire chief's standpoint, he'll be interested in having that conversation about the access. He'll want to discuss the fire storage with you, and also, like we saw at 1050 Main Street, you may be interested in having some kind of on-site water storage facility, especially due to the size of this project. I saw that you had submitted a estimate for decommissioning.
Yes.
Thank you for that. The way that the process will work is we'll take that and your plan set and relate to our third-party engineering firm. And they'll look at your numbers, but it'll be their number that we go by, especially for the value, but I think you've done some good work that will expedite that process. I think that's
I had one other thing, kind of associated with that third party. One of the requirements, or one of the conditions from the Conservation Commission was that the third party reviewer would review our stormwater calculations. Is that typically part of the third party review? And if so, if not, can it be part of it?
we could, since you're going to be funding that anyway, we can add that on.
I would show you that, otherwise we would have to get a separate third party review to satisfy that condition.
Right, so they have that capacity. So let's just discuss that maybe tomorrow. We can do a Zoom discussion and arrange that. That works.
Thank you.
Gentlemen?
Just one further question. I don't know how I could conduct this on the other one.
Get closer to the mic.
Hello? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. What gets done for weed and brush control, especially during the month of July, or months of July, particularly August?
So,
I know I have, at my home, I have a tremendous issue with weeds and brush in August. And I'm just wondering what gets done to deal with that.
yeah, so a couple of things. Within the fenced area, basically an operation and maintenance company will be hired to periodically mow inside the fence or between the rows to ensure that the growth in that area does not get out of hand and present a fire risk or anything like that. Outside the fence is actually when we clear the trees in that area. It's really for shade management, so the stumps will be left in place to limit the soil and disturbance as much as possible. So out there, in that area between the tree line and the fence, that's actually left to become sort of an emergent type brush forest. So there's no maintenance done in that area. It's allowed to kind of grow naturally.
What about in and around the county? What weed whack the whole thing? Once a week or something like that? I just maybe I'll get something that'll help me out with my property here.
Goats, you can put goats back there.
Yeah, I know. I don't want anything that requires maintenance. I'm at a stage in life where I'm going to go a little dangerous. No, but in all seriousness, what about in and around the panels? I mean, the sun always finds some way to sneak through. In this part of the world, this part of the country, if there's sun, there's growth.
They typically follow the same, like they're not using any pesticides or anything like that, so typically it's just mowing.
All mechanical.
Yes. Yep.
You didn't help me out at all.
Apologize.
What is the total site here? You have 18 acres, that's the whole complete site?
That is the area within the perimeter fence. So the total limit of work is of 20.
Have you estimated the duration of construction for this project?
Yeah, typically 6 months, give or take, for a site this large, and that's specifically active construction, so from tree clearing to substantial mechanical completion. Oftentimes there's a delay before we actually can interconnect into the grid, but that's the main construction period.
And one more, and I promise to be quiet.
Talk all night, feel free.
Is there an Eversource switching station or substation somewhere near that array, or is it a ways off? I mean, is the electricity that you produce, is it going to have to go through miles of transmission line before it makes it back to the Eversource system? Just curious.
I apologize, I don't remember the specific location of the substation for this facility, but typically it's the closer the better. So I would have to double check to see which substation that.
Okay, if you would for the next time we see you,
I can definitely do that.
As a follow-on to that, perhaps, and I think you mentioned it earlier, but the poles that go from the array to the street are on either side of this property that you own. Is that correct?
Yes, so the parcel, this kind of magenta line is the parcel. So there are poles on both sides of the access drive, but it's all the same, it's all.
You own the property on either side of the access?
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't mention earlier, the conduit or the electrical connection is actually underground up until those utility poles.
Gentlemen of the board, any more questions?
I promise. I just.
You could have another one, you only got one more, go ahead.
Now, this inverter that's there, I mean, I'm assuming that there's some kind of standard that it has to meet for radio frequency broadcasting, like to set people's TV, radio, any reception like that. It's just that this project is a lot bigger than ones that we've seen before. So there's more of a potential for something like that to disrupt the neighbors.
Yep, they're all, the UL listing. I actually did submit some product information on the various pieces of equipment that we're going to be using. So I
Does it have some kind of, the equipment have some kind of shielding on it to, prevent it from disturbing people's reception?
whatever, not any additional other than what comes from the manufacturer. So I look into what the standard, the requirements that these electrical equipment needs to meet for next meeting, but we're not proposing anything that have additional shielding.
If you could submit a prior cut for that equipment, I would just appreciate it.
Certainly.
Oh, is that it? Does it say we don't promise that there won't be any television or radio disruption?
No, it
I
doesn't.
still listen to that. Or why, I guess in this day and age, cell phone reception.
On the upper right, there's information on the inverter specs.
That's technical, but it was saying anything about radio
So,
frequency mitigation. Okay, if you could, the next time you come, if you could just do a little homework on that, just to educate the board.
certainly.
I mean, obviously, if there was a piece of equipment out there that was messing up everybody's cell phone reception, it would be a problem that you would have to address, but I'm just wondering what the standard is.
Yeah.
What is going to be done to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I can assure you that won't be the case because all this equipment does have standards that they have to be manufactured by. But I can definitely look into the specifics of those standards for next time.
Guys, any more? Public, anybody in the public, please feel free to come up and ask any questions you'd like. That's what we call a public hearing. Just come up and introduce yourself and ask away.
Robert Hollow, 141 Number Road.
Couple things. Back in 91,
You put the mic close to your face, so sorry about that.
That's okay. Back in 91, we had a small hurricane, and we actually had a tornado touchdown in that area, where everything kind of disappeared from waterways. And I'm just wondering, under these insurance things, since my property's basically up here, we had a hurricane, whatever, and a storm came through, the wrecked panels, and the panels land up on my property, who's liable for the cleanup? And is it insured?
If you could discuss this is a ballasted system or a ground mounted system, and the hurricane rating for that system.
Definitely. So the system that we use is an augured screw foundation, so it's not ballasted. It's actually screws that are augured into the ground. As far as that hypothetical situation, I think it would obviously depend on what the failure was. We do our racking manufacturer, TerraSmart, does warranty the racking. They do calculations based on a specific wind speed that is specified by the ASTM manual, dependent on the location. So down here, higher wind speed that's 95, as opposed to somewhere further from the coast. I don't have that exact number. I can get that for next meeting, but I can assure you that they are heavily designed to ensure that they can handle that wind.
I'm not thrilled with the screw-in system. I've worked on a lot of those projects using cement, concrete, to anchor these systems in the ground. Adds weight, adds stability. I'm not thrilled with the screw system. And I'm not really happy with your answer when it comes to the wind. I'm talking possible tornado. I've had it on that farm. I've seen it. And that's life. And if it's an LLC, whatever you want to call it, once that thing's built, it's built. It's usually sold to somebody else. It's passed down the road to somebody else. That's what happens. And I want to know if the town's going to put some kind of agreement in there. If there is a problem when it comes to these solar farms and damage, and it lands on somebody else's property, are they going to be liable for the cleanup? That's an easy solution, I can think so.
There is a decommissioning on this at the end, but I'm not absolutely sure. So I have to go to town council and ask them that anyway. Well,
Yeah, decommission, this is like...
I'm talking decommission one, but I'm talking about what you said too, sir. I will go to the town lawyers and ask them your exact question. I don't have an answer, I'm not a lawyer.
All right, now when it comes to where the power goes, I've been involved with a few people talking projects. There's a line, I think there's 3 lines to it, half a mile down the cut, going towards the town, center of town. They don't know if that's full of power already, which means, when I was involved in all this stuff, if it could even be used. Now, I was told, when I was here last time, that they're gonna change the 1-phase to a 3-phase going up in the road, so they can tie it into about half a mile away up the street. Because I have talked to engineers with Eversource in the past, and they informed me that you cannot connect directly into the grid. That's why you have to have a 3-phase line going by the property. And that's basically all I'm going to say about that. But I'm really concerned about where the stuff lands. I'm not thrilled with the screw system. I don't see it. I know that land. And they want to go cheap. Takes a lot of concrete to put those systems in. All right, we're going to screw it in. Okay. I just want to cover the liability in case there's a problem when it comes to storm damage. And it's in the direction of somebody else's property. Okay, who's going to pay for the cleanup and all that kind of stuff. So, thank you very much.
More than welcome, sir. We will get to town council and get an answer for you. Anybody else? Please feel free.
live at 275 Lindell Road, and a direct butter to the property. Do you have any proposals for any house lots along the road, along Lindell Road for that property? Or is it all going to be solar?
So I'm with Greg Solid. So the kind of the way it works is we will lease this land from our landowner. So as far as their plans for the remaining parcel, I can't answer that. I know as part of this project, no, there's nothing.
So
What you see
This
is
is Lindell Road?
that's correct. Yeah.
Is this all going to be woods? Or are you clearing
That
to the
so.
street?
For this project, this kind of dark green is existing trees that will remain trees. So we're not, basically our system is set back almost 800 feet, 750 to 800 feet back. And closer to Mendel Road from that, the only thing that we're touching is the existing driveway and putting up utility poles.
Is it going to be fenced or
The system will be fenced and locked,
Yeah.
7-foot fence. Not the access road, but the modules and equipment that. This is kind of red line with the squares.
Will you along?
Karen, just go to the mic so we can hear you, we can't hear you guys. Just stay 6 feet apart.
Yep.
Do you think?
As far as the chain link fence, putting any shrubbery, arborvitae's around all that, usually, whether you can see it from the road or not, usually a solar company will maintain it, make it look presentable. We do have a lot of wildlife in there, so I don't know how you can control that. As far as that road going in, anybody can go down that road, if you don't block it off and secure it. We've got a lot of dirt bikers in that area, we've got a lot of people that want to dump garbage. You need to block that off for your own protection and for everybody else's protection. As far as any utility poles, do they put any on the street? Am I gonna have utility poles in my front yard? Because I believe the substation is across the street, across from our house going up. So are there any poles, any kind of work on the street that's gonna happen? That we're gonna have to look at?
So to answer that question directly, right now, basically the road is handled by the utility, so we haven't seen what their proposal is. Typically, no, maybe there will be one additional pole required, but typically, no, there will be no additional poles along Mendel Road. They may have to replace some, but it's reconductoring, pulling up the old one, putting a new larger pole typically in the same spot. The new poles are all along that existing dirt road that's used by the Girl Scout camp. Your first question, can you remind me? Oh, that's a landscape. So yeah, oftentimes when a project is on a main road or close to the road with landscape, this project is so set back, so secluded, and we're maintaining a significant wooded buffer around it in really in all directions that we're not proposing additional landscaping.
So, ladies and gentlemen, anybody else from the public, please feel free. Just if you could get to the mic, please, ma'am, thank you very much.
I live on Mendel Road, 206, my name is Travers. The only question I have is, are you planning on having an emergency road around this conference of this? So if something happens down there, and you have to call the fire department, and do that, how are they going to take what's necessary to get into the back of this area?
There's no perimeter road proposed, but kind of the gravel or the gray hatched area on the plans of the proposed roads. There is a gap, so there are gaps between the fence and the modules that are effectively to be used for emergency situations. But the biggest thing is that these are unmanned systems, so there's only going to be operation and maintenance people out there, a few times a year.
What I'm concerned about is if there is something that does happen, when the fire department has to get in to the back. I mean, some of the sites that I've seen on paper have some kind of road that goes around them. So at least you can get an emergency vehicle in back there if you have to. I mean, maybe it's not necessary, maybe you don't think it is. But I'm just thinking, if something does happen, how are we going to get the manpower or somebody in back there to prevent whatever's happening?
I can speak to that a little bit. It's a very good question. Typically, what we expect is that there will be a perimeter road on the inside of the fence line, which you do have with a couple of turnarounds, I think, as you described earlier. Correct?
Our current design does not have an entire ring road around the entire, it's kind of like only along the west side.
Okay,
So there is a gap that, as I mentioned, a gap between the fence and the modules that could be effectively used for that.
Okay, so know that the fire chief will be looking at this from exactly from the perspective that you're describing, which means that they may have to modify the circulation.
That's to be honest with you, that's what I'm looking at. If something happens, because you've got manpower that might have to go in there, and how wide is this, and how far would they have to drag hose or a stretcher, or God forbid if anything does happen? It's a lot to put through.
Chief Gallagher has a set of, and you're going to be subjected to that, he has a set of standards that he expects to be followed on these projects.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen some of them, and they have some kind of a roadway.
Right.
And you've got to figure it's got to be big enough to carry whatever is necessary.
Also, they could have a water tank on that site also.
Wow.
Which is site.
There's a lot of possibilities that you're going to have to go into.
This
Think
is,
about it.
this is their first meeting, and there will be adjustments to the plan as we move through.
There'll be a lot more meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to touch on that real quick, obviously happy to work with the fire chief to make adjustments. This is our first meeting. Different towns have different requirements depending on the fire, apparatus that they use. So I'll definitely be talking to the fire chief and taking these recommendations, modifying the plans.
Ladies and gentlemen, public, please, anybody else have any more questions? Please feel free to come up. With that, gentlemen on the board, any more questions? Okay, and if I could, anybody that's here for this particular article that we have, would you please be kind enough to come up and sign the paper when you leave? With that, is there a motion to go from regular, public hearing into regular hearing? We will have the next meeting on this at 7:30 on September 24th. Is that okay?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With that, is there a motion to go from public hearing back into regular meeting?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your time. Could I just confirm that you said September 24th?
That is correct, 7:30, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Next on the agenda is a request for a lot release from Manise Estates. Is anybody here from Manise Estates? My goodness, double duty tonight, Steve, huh?
Yes, indeed. Good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman, Steve Gioso with SciTech, representing Manise Estates. Dan Manise, the principal of the development, is also here this evening. Manise Estates is a subdivision you folks approved last year. It has gone through the initial phases of construction. They have installed drainage, the water system, all the way up to and including the binder for the roadway. This evening, what we're looking for is a release of some of the lots within the project. At this time, we are looking to see if we can get a release of lots 1 through 8 and then 13 through 17. There have been inspections along the way of the construction. SW Cole has been out there doing compaction testing, material testing, inspecting water and drainage installations. I don't know if you have their reports. I do have copies of their reports here that I can leave with the board this evening.
We do not have a report, but we have a summary letter from the DPW.
So as Mr. Young indicated, there is a letter that the DPW director, Mr. Menard, had sent in confirming that there have been inspections and the work has been done in a proper fashion up to the point that I've outlined. The remaining work would be the final paving on the roadway and cleanup of the shoulders, loaming and seeding, and essentially the end of the job. But clearly we want to get the major house construction underway before we undertake that final cleanup phase of the construction, which is why we're not asking for all the lots that are released at this time. We have, because we weren't sure which lots the board would be comfortable with, we have put together individual lot release requests for the lots in question, and we did drop those off at the town hall. I do have duplicates here if the board needs another copy. But again, we're looking tonight to get partial release of the covenant that has been recorded at the registry for the project. The Mylar for the subdivision is recorded in book 179, page 45. So again, all the proper documents have been recorded up to this point, and we are looking for a lot release.
How many lots in the subdivision altogether?
17 altogether, and we're looking for 13 of the 17 to be released if the board is comfortable with that.
For the benefit of the board, in Article 5, Section 504 of the subdivision regulations, there are some requirements that must be met prior to release of lots. I'll paraphrase them. Okay, the first one is that the engineer, that would be Mr. Gioso, has provided the as-built stating the streets and drainage installations have been constructed and completed in accordance with the definitive plan. And that has been done.
Yes, we've done a partial as-built. Obviously, that's waiting for final completion of the road system.
As the lots are built, they'll be stuffed in.
I mean, we'll be filling in the gaps on that.
Right. The second is speaks to the Acushnet water pressure test.
Yes, so the water line has been installed and inspected, pressure tested. So yes, the water system, and I think that is included in Mr. Menard's letter confirming that. And we, again, I think some of the inspection reports you have here from SW Cole confirm that.
I just want to get you on record saying that. Okay, the third is that the subdivision is served by on-lot septic, which
Yes.
is the case. The Board of Health certification that the soils have been tested and suitable, that are suitable for sewage disposal, you have that as well.
Yeah, all the lots have been perked with the Board of Health witnessing.
And then finally, the fourth requirement is that a registered land surveyor or civil engineer, which would be yourself, has placed the monuments properly. That's not on the property. Okay, so with those requirements having been met, we have a letter. Oh, you have a letter from Dan Menard, the DPW director.
Yes.
Which essentially states that those conditions have been met. So I just want to make sure that it was clear to the board that those requirements of our subdivision regulations had been met for appropriately for where this project is.
Correct.
Okay, so the second point I wanted to make sure the board was aware of is the how many lots we can release. There's a rate of development standard in our bylaws. So in accordance with section 3.3C6. For subdivisions containing less than 25 lots, which this is, 5 lots can be released per year, and that per year is based on the date that the definitive plan is approved. So, can you tell me how we got to the math of 13 lots?
Oh, that's an excellent question. The definitive plan was released in 2000, was approved in 2019. In fact, the Mylar was recorded on May 1st, 2019, after the appeal period. So we have, I guess, the ability to get 5 lots associated with 2019. We're now in 2020, so I assume that that would limit us to 10 lots at this time.
By my math.
Understood. That makes perfect sense.
And then you requested 13, so do you have a priority of which lots?
Yes, because there are lots that have been committed, and they obviously would like to get going with the construction when we're having good weather. 1 through 8.
Is there 10 lots? Is going to be enough? I know you want 13, but give you 10 now. You can pick the numbers that you want, or you have any under purchase and sales agreements at this moment.
We actually have 3. My name is Dan Denise, Team Development. We have
Close to
3
right
that
now.
we have 3 that right now are under agreed.
So if we give you 10, you're happy?
Yeah, that'd be fine. That would work. And it,
Hold up then.
yeah, it's,
You got it.
the
You
one,
pick 10.
the 1 through 8, and then on the opposite side of the road, I think it's 17 through, coming back off the power lines, coming up, so that would be the next, to right, 17 and 16. 17 and 16.
So 1 through 8, and 16 and 17.
Yes. Thank you.
So, based on that, my recommendation to the board is to release lots 1 through 8 and 16 through 17.
John, was there a motion?
Make a motion to accept that.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye, unanimous.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have to make a, release of lots, we have to make a document out on which lots we have to put on?
They have prepared the documents, so we can now sign those. Break those out right now.
Sign this document, pass it back, please. With that, all we have to do is sign these, you guys are all set, give us a few minutes to sign.
We sign those, and then they have to be notarized. But,
You
yeah,
wanna,
if you can return those to me, we can take care of that tomorrow or early next week. And then I'll make copies and pass it to you.
okay?
So I'll wait to get it down.
No, we have to get it notarized tomorrow, we have to take it to the town
So
clerk.
I have to meet with you.
Right, that's okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. It being 8:50, Form A for Ellen and Robert Hardy, 1443 Main Street. And Diane Ernest Ventura, 1461 Main Street. Mr. Romanelli of Zenith Land Surveyors. Are you here, Mr. Romanelli? Up, in the back. Bring it closer to the mic, please. Sure. Thank you.
Esteem Land Surveyors. I'm here representing Diane Green Shore and Robert Hardy.
You're closer to the mic, Sean. Make believe you're on TV.
Diane and Ernie Ventura live at 1461, the Apple Peach Orchard, I'm sure everybody seems to know what that is. What we're looking to do here is basically do two things. We're cleaning up the tile. Right now, if you look at the current assessment map, Diane and Ernie only, it's about a 240 by 200 foot block. Doesn't even encompass their house right now. Ellen actually owns most of the orchard by deed, and it's been that way for years. They're getting up in age, they want to clean this up, so this is going to clean up that portion of the problem. And in the meantime, they're going to sell off one more buildable lot, which we are creating. It's the lot in orange that has 40 feet of frontage on Main Street. It's going to be a retreat lot. It's 12.16 acres. It does have some wetlands on it, but the contiguous upland is over 300,000 square feet of upland area. There's plenty of upland area. It has had a recent perk test by Mr. Al Ewing, so I've gone on to a perk test. So we're creating 16B for Ellen, I'm sorry, for Diane Ernie. Which is 6.75 acres. Ellen and Robert Hardy, their new lot is 16B, which is 4.82 acres, and then the new lot on back, which is 16C, is a little over 12 acres. The remaining lot, Diane and Ernie has actually no wetlands at all on it, and Ellen and Roberts has about, it's about 5,000 square feet of wetlands, that's about it. So, pretty straightforward, cleans up a couple things, and gets them a buildable lot to sell out back.
Gentlemen, any questions? I'll just bring you something.
Well, that's the frontage and the area required.
Gentlemen, is there a motion?
Make motion to accept the plan as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. We have all your formative stuff. Sir? That it, Joe? With that, 850, close enough, 855. Presentation on request for site plan review with approval, public hearing regarding commercial development, 158 Main Street, 166 Main Street, 17 Wing Road, Patrick McLaughlin, PE, GPI agreement, Edison Incorporated. Gentlemen, please come up and introduce yourself and tell us why you're here.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Phil Lombardo, and I'm the attorney for New England Retail Development. Who is proposing to develop the property as a gas station convenience store. With me this evening is Mickey Higgins, the representative of the owner, Delta Realty, and Mickey and the developer are proposing on this. So what we have done thus far is to submit a series of plans and supporting documents to the town clerk. And we're hoping to submit those to you this evening to get this process going. It's a boatload of material on the back desk, and I, not having been here yet before, I don't know what to do with all that material. So we're happy to bring it up to you, or leave it there, tell you what it is. Under the circumstances, I don't know how you guys want to handle the personal contact stuff.
As soon as we're done here, you and I can discuss how we'll formally accept it.
So, It's difficult to talk about it. I would prefer having you folks having something in front of you or having a markup. But I'll just tell you that, as you may know, there are 2 residences there and a service repair, former gas station property, all contiguous. One property is along Wing Road, the other 2 properties are along Main Street. And what the developer is looking to do is raise all 3 buildings and put instead a 4,200 square foot gas station convenience store with a drive-through and a convenience store on the inside. So not having them in front of me, and maybe correct me, I think there are 4 dispensers planned, and they would be, the dispensers, fueling positions would be parallel to the street. So people would drive in, one proposed driveway, fuel up, and leave another proposed driveway, all parallel to the Main Street. And inside the convenience store will be the typical convenience store, sales items, small packages, milk and candy and so forth, as well as a drive-through coffee operation. Hopefully it'll come to donuts. Is that your understanding? Is Dunkin' Donuts would be? Not yet? Okay, so we don't know who would be dispensing the coffee at the drive-through.
With this is just a site plan review at the public hearing, correct?
Right. First, I want to thank you for your patience. I know that we've been working on this, getting to this point for some time, dealing with the COVID situation and determining the process, the best process for moving forward. So as we've discussed on several occasions, more recently, our council, KP has established, from our perspective, that this project would be subject to site plan review approval, which requires a public hearing. We look forward to that. We have these types of projects from time to time. So the action would be taken by the planning board today, or tonight, would simply be to set you up to make presentations for site plan review via a public hearing at our September meeting. Is that, are we on the same
That's
page?
perfectly fine. We appreciate your working with us as well. It is not easy. We're all doing the best we can. So we do look forward to a formal presentation to the board and the public next month.
Great. We can be in contact as to, this is the type of project where we want to make sure we have a good visual presentation. So we will work that out so the planning board and the public can see it if they're here in person or if they're watching on TV. That would be important. Did you intend to have a PowerPoint presentation of some kind?
Yeah, well, we have not been here yet to see what the setup was like. So it looks like you've got TV. We just didn't know if it's kind of old school where the TV zooms in on the plan from time to time, or if you folks set up something on your own.
We will work through those logistics, but
We will have to talk about how to do that efficiently, informally.
Set up the date now for this.
so again, my recommendation to the board is to set up a public hearing at our September 24th meeting.
45, good? Sure. Slightly.
Site plan review. And approval, right?
You have to make a motion. Is there a motion, gentlemen? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous to have public hearing at 7:45 p.m. As long as we get to school, we'll be right back here again for a site plan review for this particular.
As far as the procedures for having a public hearing, you will need to contact the assessor's office to get the abutters list. You're responsible for mailing those out to the abutters. Then you bring in your certified, receipt, the green cards. At the beginning, you present those to us at the beginning of the meeting next month.
Gentlemen, all set?
Meet there? after the meeting.
How many copies do you have?
10.
Right. So I will, I'll take custody of those after, you can stick around for a few.
We're happy to wait for you.
If you would, that'd be great. Thank you.
You'll need somebody to help you with all that stuff.
I saw the file with it.
With that, continuing on, 9:05, we're pretty good. Formal presentation, development of lot, assesses plot 8, lot 25, and related access issues of Mansion Way. Mark Francis, represented by Richard E. Burke Jr. Anybody here for that? Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Richard Burke. I'm an attorney in Bedford, Florida. I work in Franco. I represent Mark Francois, the property owner. With me this evening is Dave DeVignan, and also with me is attorney Peter Paul, who's been working with me on this project. The property in question is Plat 8, Lot 25. Mr. Francois is contemplating a subdivision proposal. The reason that we asked to meet with you and we sent a letter in previously to Mr. Young is because there have been some questions raised about the access road, which we discussed in the letter that we sent in to the board. Actually, I can just give you a very brief description. The original time that the board saw this property was back in 1994. Mark and his brother Dean presented a Form A plan at that point, which divided their property. It's approximately 38 acres into two lots. Then again, there was an A&R plan in 2006 where they showed a division of lots on either side of the road in question, 4 lots on Mark's side and 3 lots on Dean's side. Later on in 2012, at the very end of the road, the board had another, at this point it was a subdivision plan for a single lot at the end of the road for a Gilbert tenant. So the road, the road in question, it's an ancient way. It shows up on the very earliest Acushnet town atlas, dating back to 1871, and it's shown on the town map as an ancient way. It's a 30-foot easement. It exists on the ground with a gravel road about 10 feet wide. And it's that road that we would be proposing to develop. Mark would like to come in with a new subdivision plan, which would show 6 lots utilizing that road for access. Since there have been questions raised in the past about the road, we've looked at that issue as a matter of his right to use the road, as a matter of title. That's partly where Peter comes in with his expertise in title issues. We're very confident that Mark has the right to utilize this ancient way, both because it's an ancient way and because he has a deeded right of way to use it. But before proceeding with the subdivision plan, we wanted to discuss the matter with you to see, just so we don't get sidetracked once we get started, if the board had any questions as to our letter, our argument as to our right to use the road as a subdivision access, we wanted to bring that to your attention so that we could address that before proceeding with a full subdivision plan. As you can see on this map here, this is the road in question. It goes from Perry Hill Road, bisects the property. Mark's property is on the right, on the side, 25 feet is shown here. And then we attach these plans with my letter, but this is showing the subdivision plan that, actually an A&R plan that they filed in 2006. Again, utilizing the roadway with lots on either side, they were presented to the board as retreat lots at that point. We have a conceptual plan to come in with 6 lots now on Mark's side. Again, Perry Hill Road at the bottom, the 30-foot easement shown on the plan. At the very end is the cul-de-sac, which was utilized as part of the subdivision frontage in the 2012 plan for Mr. Bennett at that point. Recognizing at that point that this right-of-way is an ancient way, the board approved 1 lot at that. What we would like to do is we would improve the road as part of a formal subdivision presentation. We wouldn't keep it as it is now. It would be upgraded. But before we spend all the money doing that and devising that plan, we wanted to try to address that on if the board had any questions with this right-of-way, if the board wanted to refer it to town council or ask any questions that they may have of us. That's it. Thank you.
On the original one for this, it went back with cul-de-sac on it. Is there a right way that one's good? Right there. No, leave that one up. The one you just had is fine. On the original Kimberly used 2008, 2009, sir?
The first plan was 1994, and in that plan was an A&R plan when the 2 brothers, Mark and Dean, originally divided their property on the A&R plan. You see the same road here, starting at Perry Hill Road and all the way through.
Oh, was that cul-de-sac put in?
It was existing at the time. It was an existing way.
But
The cul-de-sac didn't exist at that point. Sorry.
But it exists now, correct?
It exists now.
Sure.
In 2011, our office submitted a definitive subdivision plan for the development of a large tract of land at the end of the ancient way. And in order, basically, they have 28.5 acres, but they only had frontage on the ancient way on the very end of it, so they didn't have any legal frontage. So we went through this definitive subdivision process with the planning board, and we created the cul-de-sac. The way is gravel all the way through until you get to that field, and they created a gravel cul-de-sac. The planning board approved it, they built the cul-de-sac. It exists within that small circle that you see. There is 1 house on that entire 28 acres of property. So the ancient way now has a cul-de-sac for fire protection, for a turnaround. We wouldn't be including that in any future development of the Swindon Creswell property, which is everything to the south, this side right here.
I believe at that time we did agree it was an ancient way.
Yes, it was vetted. Mr. Snow.
So they could put 1 house on the very large acreage in the back, correct?
That's correct. It had nothing to do with the Francois property. He had the legal right to go through the ancient way to get to the property. It's the old Tripp Farm.
Yep, I understand.
I think it was
a while back, the rain gets a little foggy sometimes. I was under the assumption, I might be wrong, it was 2009, you said?
2011.
Were there any stipulations put in at that time that said you could not use that to build a subdivision road? I can't remember, I remember something, but I don't have any of the stuff. Pre-creates an ancient way because we gave you cul-de-sac, correct?
That's correct. We did have, your memory's pretty good.
Oh, yes.
There were 3 stipulations that were agreed upon through the public hearing process. And this cul-de-sac was to remain private. No additional lots would be created until such time as the ancient way is upgraded to provide the access to it. And
those stipulations, I just didn't know what they were.
Yes, they're listed right above where you signed. But it restricted this lot from further development based upon the conditions that exist today.
Well, is there, what were the other 2 to,
The second one said the proposed roadway layout shall remain private, and speaking just about the cul-de-sac. And the third said a building permit shall be issued for the property until construction of the cul-de-sac is completed. And they did complete the cul-de-sac, say within a year or so, and then I don't think the house went up for several years after that, but the house has been in for like 5 or 6 years. So the concept that we're looking to do is to, the ancient way right now is a right-of-way that runs through 2 properties.
Right, then one road goes one and one road goes the other.
Correct. This being the dividing line right here. So the idea is to change the right-of-way that runs to the property from an easement form into a full layout, a real layout. Define the lines as solid lines, so it becomes a roadway layout. Then we upgrade the gravel road to something that we can agree upon with the town, something say 20 feet
How
wide.
many asphalt should we put on?
There would be a total of 6. The property would be divided into 6. Currently, it's 3 retreat lots. They're ugly, pork chop lots, contorted in every way you can. And these would be more conventional, rectangular in nature. There's 4 houses. There's an existing home on this lot right here. It's positioned so it would be a lot 4. So there would be 5 existing new homes built beyond the existing.
I can't see the 4 on one side, 2 on the other.
1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 and 6.
Okay, good.
What's the effect on the lot in the rear once you upgrade that road?
It would enhance his public safety, his public access.
Would it make that lot in the back subdividable now?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to it. We would not be touching the gravel cul-de-sac, and if that were to be paved and improved to town standards, could
I'm just
perhaps...
going by the stipulation in the thing saying that until the road was upgraded, that no further subdividing would be done up there.
That's correct. There is potential for that to be expanded. He's not a part of this application. The gentleman is aware of what Mr. Francois wants to do. He's obviously in favor because he's driving down.
How far is the road from Berry Hill to the cul-de-sac?
Probably restrict the last lot from being further subdivided because they would have to extend the road, which would mean another waiver, which you're already beyond that.
I'm Peter Ball, working with Richard and Dave and Mark, and we're on the same page. We're on the same page as the board because, as Mr. Young aptly pointed out, and I think it was a 2011 memo, that you have to have 1,000 feet of continuous legal access to get to a public road. And in your memo, Mr. Young, I think you said that no action or no decision was being taken as to whether or not Mr. Francois had the legal right. You were just addressing the, I call it the Otis Trip lot, which is the lot way out to the north. So nothing is more important to me as a conveyancing attorney than legal access. Because if I'm doing a title for the bank or a private investor, and one of the first things to ask, do you have legal access to it? And that's what we want to make sure. And in my opinion, we absolutely have legal access. There are 3 recorded plans, and 2 of them have been, at least 2 of them have been before the board, and there was legal access on those. I think the case law is pretty clear that if you have lots that butt away on a recorded plan, you have the right to use that way for its entire length. You also have the right to expand it and, well, I should say improve it, which Mark intends to do. It is an ancient way. The cases are a little bit gray, going back and forth. It's not an accepted public ancient way, but it shows up on the atlas of Acushnet, I think 6 years after Acushnet became a town. I think Acushnet became a town in 1860, and I think it shows up in like 1865. I don't know whether you've been out there, but in my opinion, it has legal access from Mark's property all the way down to Perry Hill Road.
Just one quick question. Does that include I understand the access issues. Does that include the right to install utilities in that ancient way? Drainage, storage, electric?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I'd have to, I think probably I would go with it, but I don't know the answer.
In terms of us looking at doing a subdivision access down there or subdivision road, I think we will need to have that clarified.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fair enough.
Really, our intention in coming here tonight is just to preliminarily raise these issues to see if there was anything that the board wanted us to do, whether it's with town council or whatever, before we proceed with the next step. And certainly some of the issues you talked about tonight we'll look into further as well.
So the elephant in the room is the stretch of the way between this Perry Hill Road and the split.
That probably is the elephant in the way, to the extent that there's a disagreement between the brothers on how they want to move forward. We feel that we have a legal right of access. It's really our only right, our only access. It has to be a legal right. So that's the question that could potentially be raised. We've looked at it. Peter and I have looked at it. Dave, and, our opinion is that we do have legal access. But if it's something that the board wants to corroborate, then, we'd like to do that before they spend a lot of money on engineering and development and plans and so forth.
Right. I think the distinguishing, and this is to Mr. Ellis's point, I think the distinction between right of access and right of upgrading, and to what extent the road will be upgraded, is really what we need to nail down. And I presume that there is some contention between the abutters in question, or is there an agreement on upgrading this?
Well, at this point, Mark is proceeding on his own to develop his half. We're very confident that when you have a right to use a road, the case law is very clear, that includes the right to improve the road. And we believe as well the utilities, certainly pavement, other upgrades, to the extent that Mark needs to put utilities on his own property, he could do that as well. So these are the preliminary issues. We just wanted to highlight to you to see how you would like us to move forward. If you have questions, and if there's any other better way we can answer them.
Well, the place I want to stay out of is land court, which is where this project has the potential to end up. So I think that the first step, you've done a lot of research, and thank you for the package that you submitted. I would suggest to the board that the next step be for the board to pass that to KP Law, to our council, and probably have a meeting with the parties, so that we can, before we move too far along, we are all agreeing on what is, in terms of what is allowed out there. That it is an ancient way, and is established. It's the distinction between access and upgrade that is going to be the issue to get through. I think we all agree on that.
That makes sense to us.
I do have one further question. Okay, so now somebody improves the road, puts all the utilities in. Does every person along the edge of that road have the right to utilize those utilities? Or is that, that's another issue. I mean, again, if we're looking at it as a subdivision road, normally anybody along the edge of the road would have access to the utilities that get constructed in it, electric, storm drainage, water, or whatever it may be. I think that's another question that I have when we're looking at both doing a subdivision road. And especially with brothers that are disagreeing, I really don't want to get into the middle of that now.
we agree upon this, that we agree this is an ancient way, correct?
Yes.
We all agree upon that? Then we go from this point on, and I just want to clarify that. It's an ancient way, yes, correct?
Yes, that's been established in 2012, 2011 timeframe.
So we agree upon it, we'll make a motion that, you gentlemen, you have to go to the law.
Right, recommend the board that the next step would be for me to coordinate between this party, Mr. Burke, and Mr. Francois, and KP Law, and other parties we think are necessary to come to consensus on what is in terms of access and upgrade, and some of these issues which Mr. Ellis just raised.
One of the issues Mr. DeVignan was just raising, which I suppose could also be a subject of discussion with town council, is whether this could proceed as an A&R plan or whether it would have to proceed as a subdivision, full subdivision plan, given the type of development that we're proposing here. So that's something as well that we would welcome a discussion with the town.
Is there a motion, gentlemen, to,
I certainly would make the motion that we refer the matter to KP Law and try and get a couple of these issues resolved. And of course, there's always the question of, this is the right of access to the farmer that owns the big lot up on the back at the end of the ancient way, or, and I'm going to exaggerate here, or 25 new house lots along the edge of it. You know, I'm not quite sure where the law sits on that particular issue. You know, when we access that, people have rights to access it. Does one person have the right, or do 25 people have the right? I don't know that. I don't have the answer to that question either. The town, obviously, we don't want to get embroiled in some kind of lawsuit that's going to drag on.
especially the landlords, huh?
It certainly is our opinion that you have the right to develop lots along the road or to utilize the road along the way. That's our view of the right of use.
And I don't disagree with that, but now we get to how many people have that right of access. You know, only the people that own an existing parcel, you know, without dividing it up, you know, so is it like 2 people that have the right to access? Or if the land gets divided up, you know, for the next 20 years, 20 or 30 people have the right of access. That's really my question. I don't question that there are, I mean, my understanding of these ancient ways is that, I mean, you basically were talking about 2 or 3 farmers. And one farmer said, okay, I'll sell you the back lot, and I'll give you the right to access this lot along this gravel path. And, you know, there's a progression from there to get to again, I'm going to exaggerate and say a 20 or 25 lot subdivision, or whatever it might be. And I'm not quite sure what that dividing line is, if there is one.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, because we're in the process of trying to get applying for title insurance on that. You don't want to have a subdivision out there and then find out you can't market the lots because you can't get title insurance. And that's actually one of the questions that the title company has raised, and we think we have the answer to that. So perhaps if we can get the title company on board, that'll be a help for KP Law too, because if they'll insure it, well then that's answer to your question.
I mean, obviously, there's some very complicated, at least for us, legal issues here, and we're going to rely on KP Law's interpretation of whatever information you provide.
That's fine. Richard's submitted a nice package, and I hope that you got my supplement to it with a lot of additional things.
Yes. Thank you.
So there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With that, we'll go to KPR, and if you want to get the tax people on your side, what do you think?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Are we done yet?
No.
All right,
Nobody wants to wait.
you've been sitting here for a while, brother.
That's all right. Couple of copies of the plan. That was the one before Christmas. Good evening, gentlemen. I promise I'll try to be quick so you guys can go home. My name is Ben Reese. I'm here for the Levante Street subdivision that was approved last year. It was approved with a 4-foot sidewalk running down the right-hand side of the road. Since speaking with the neighbors, the 3 immediate abutters on that side of the road, some of them have raised objections to the sidewalk, not wanting the asphalt area to come any closer to their property than absolutely needs to be, which would be the 18-foot wide road that was approved and has since been installed. And so I'm coming tonight looking to request a waiver on that sidewalk.
So,
Go for it.
I agree with
My question for you, Mr.
on sidewalks. I certainly, before I render any decision on that, I would like to hear from the selectmen and the building inspector, and any other town board that has been instrumental in requiring us to have sidewalks on all the subdivision roads.
Correct. I would add to that determinations on subdivisions typically happen in a public hearing. And it's unclear to me whether or not we have to be in a public hearing to go back and provide a waiver on a previous subdivision.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Everything's been accepted, you just asking for a waiver for the sidewalks, correct?
Right, he'd asked for one and we denied it. Early on.
Oh, yes,
In the original proposal.
Yes, correct. And so then I've since now had objections from the neighbors, so I'm coming back and looking to request it.
The indications are there's been somewhat of a change of philosophy, but getting that in writing is imperative.
Yeah, again, I know what my opinion is on the sidewalks, but
right.
Just like all of us.
We do have to get along with the rest of the governing forces in town.
Right. My recommendation is, since I'm unaware, I tried to get a hold of Katie Law this week unsuccessfully, but between now and September 24th, I would like to see if it's a requirement that we have a public hearing to reopen the subdivision plan to provide that waiver, which I would bet that is the case. And in that time, we can also obtain a correspondence from the Board of Selectmen and others on their disposition on that waiver.
Before we get in trouble.
I mean, in the end of the process, if we're requested to release lots and a piece of the work is quote not done, and we release the lots, that would seem like that's the end of the issue. But I don't want to do that if the selectmen, the building inspector, the fire chief, the police chief, they're all still hot on. So we've got to have the sidewalks.
Right. So not having some questions unanswered, it might recommend that we create the opportunity for a public hearing on the 24th. And if that is required, we'll already have that set up. We can meet.
I have no clue. I mean, butter notification, all that stuff. I just don't know the process.
Neither do I, right?
It's like you're doing the whole process all over again, right? The subdivision has been accepted.
Right.
With the plans, with the, no waiver for sidewalks, now we're going for a waiver for sidewalks. So we have to start all over, right?
Maybe
not, right?
Maybe we only have to address that one issue.
Well, listen, they know how we feel, it's just we got to find out on what they want, right?
And the proper process.
Again, we've all got to work together here.
Yep.
I just want to
continue in a harmonious fashion.
That'd be nice. Okay, with that, is there a motion?
As an insurance policy, I would recommend we set up a public hearing.
Okay, all right, well, then I would make a motion that we have a public hearing on the issue, on this, what's the name of the subdivision? The proposed road profile and utilities at the Monty Street in Acushnet, Mass, prepared for vendor deliveries to discuss and determine the issue of the request to delete the sidewalk from the proposed construction.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Now, let me ask you this, I can schedule it, but I didn't have anybody at 6:45. Did I do something wrong? Yeah, 10:15 a.m. 87 Main Lane, 251 Mendel Road, and site plan review for the service station.
This would be,
Instead of bringing that one, we bring it in at 6:45. Okay, then 6:45 on the 24th of September. That's what's name of Monty Street.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this actually was a roadway improvement plan. I mean, the way was already laid out.
Take a street, yeah.
So, you know, that's another, that may give us some more leeway in terms of how to deal with it. But again, I still don't want to do something that's contrary to the wishes of the
Okay, 6:45 then, 24th. We'll go from there. Continuing on, what else do we have left here?
I'm sorry, just to clarify, is there anything you guys need from me on the 24th? Anything in addition that I can bring or do?
No, I think it's a philosophical issue about sidewalks that we've got to contend with this in town.
Okay, and would you guys like to hang on to those plans that I brought as well?
What's that?
Would you guys like to hang on to the copies of the plans that I brought as well?
Yes, that would be helpful.
I mean, we're gonna have to have a couple to show, Henry's gonna have to have a couple just to show, the board of selectmen, the police chief, fire chief, et cetera.
Okay, very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Did everything plan or update, anything special, Henry? Nothing, I think we took care of it all.
Right, we are working on 2 grants on this, the benefit of the board. We won a grant called the Municipal Vulnerability Protection Grant that was looking at infrastructure and what the impact of climate change will be upon it. So we're going to be commencing with a public process to get input on that, and working very closely with Survey, who's our vendor. Through the grant, we could hire a consultant, and our consultant will be Survey, which is a regional planning agency. So looking forward to that. And then we just submitted a grant to Mass Highway Department for a sidewalk upgrade along River Street. So that was just submitted last week.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a good place for a sidewalk.
Yes, it is. Right. That's it.
Gentlemen, anything else you'd like to say? I want to thank you for this long and lengthy meeting. Our next meeting will be September 24th at 6:30 p.m., hopefully right here. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Adjournment at 9:35 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.